back. WNST. Towson, Baltimore. At Baltimore Positive, we're positively doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. These are my favorite days, man. Today is the 30th anniversary of the 1993 All-Star Game at Camden Yards. We're here at Coco's. We're in Lauraville celebrating. These guys have got Natty Bows out here, Boeing, gone.
Baltimore, come on.
Yeah, we got orange and black. It's all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. They sponsor us. Natty Bow does not. I've given these away. They're the 50th anniversary scratch-offs. It's a throwback. I kind of remember these tickets from back in the 70s when I was a kid. I have one little stack of these left. Be giving these away here today at Coco's and then at the Beaumont next week in Catonsville. And there's a rumor we're going to have a Hall of Famer. I'm not going to say what kind of Hall of Fame. We have a Hall of Famer coming next week to the Beaumont, which should be great because it's always great when this person comes on the show because I enjoy this person very much. Also, on the 3rd of August and the 4th of August, it is our 25th anniversary at WNST. They said we'd never make it. You know, Jeff Beauchamp was quoted in the Baltimore Sun the day we opened. Rock did a takedown on me.
What?
Yeah, I have it. I'll show you. Rock did a takedown on me. He said that we would lack the financial ability and the talent possible to continue going. It's our 25th anniversary. So after getting pooped on in the Baltimore Sun when it mattered in the 90s by the guy who ran WBAL, I am going to stop my feet on 25 years down at Costas. We're going to be at Drug City on the 4th, and we'll be giving these away as well. So big thanks to everybody. Also, Leonard Raskin's giving me this crab mallet that I'm going to put to use on the 3rd with the beer thing. And Mr. Costas always pours me tap beer, but I'm going to pop it with this. Dave Sheinin is here from the Washington Post. Don't let that fool you because he lives in Baltimore and Butchers Hill. Mike Ricigliano lives. Would you say you live in Lauraville when people ask you? Is that what do you say?
Arcadia.
Not Berkshire though. That's up the road.
That's up the road.
Definitely not Beverly Hills.
No, that's a little. That's a little.
Do you know
up
there's
there.
a Beverly
But we
Hills
live on
over
the
here?
best street.
No, there's a Beverly Hills sign like a quarter of a mile from here.
We live on the best street, which is Eastwood Drive, which we call Clint Eastwood Drive. So it's right on the park. It's beautiful.
So Sheinin and I grew up in Dundalk, but my cousins lived, 100 yards from his house, and I spent every weekend of my childhood, my uncles and aunts playing poker, listening to merengue, all Venezuelan, in the park there, eating crabs. My uncle Nelson worked at Chesapeake Cadillac right over 25th, and we went to Orioles games because he always got the Chesapeake Cadillac club seats behind third base.
Nice.
I saw Boog play for the Indians. Wayne Garland pitched for the Indians, probably 77, 78. So I grew up in his neighborhood, and then he moved out here in 84, 85. So I had been coming to your neighborhood forever, so this is a bit. Martin O'Malley lived right down the street.
Yeah, Martin O'Malley right
My
around the corner.
My longtime girlfriend Carrie lived here on Iona.
Morgana, the kissing bandit.
No
Nestor
way. She kissed me
to
in the
party.
park.
Come party on Eastwood Drive.
I got the first base with Morgana. It's true.
It's true.
Or maybe she got the first base with me. I don't know.
Right.
Sports, it's what you've done your whole life. You grew up in King, Georgia, wanting to be a writer. Where'd you go to college? Did you go to Virginia like all those Solomon guys?
I went to Vanderbilt.
You went to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
I think I knew that. Yeah. Solomon had a thing for all those Virginia guys, right? Maskey and all those guys.
Yeah, a lot of our staffers came out of there, and Northwestern, Christine Brennan, Michael Wilbon,
some people you've heard of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Colleagues
Rachel
of yours.
Alexander.
Sure.
Rachel Nichols.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Ricig I met at the paper in 1984. I began at the News American on January the 20th, 1984. Okay, so put your head into this. The Orioles had just won the World Series. Sports First is 3 months old, and Tom Robinson needed an intern to answer phones to get Agate, right? And Bob Paston's running the sports department. Bernie Miklasz, John Hawkins, Jeff Gordon, Barry Levine, Ken Davis,
what a crew.
Tom Cousins. I'm leaving people out
just
here.
got
Ron
married,
Wennig. Like all of these mentors to me. And I met Ricig. I had a pregnant girlfriend. I was 15 years old. That's true.
Yes.
And I love sports. The Colts left 8 weeks into my time working in a sports department.
Right.
I was a part of all of that. I was there the week the football team left. We kind of believed in that eminent domain BS that maybe they weren't really gone for a minute. And then they showed up. Well, once Stedman went out and put the byline in from the Hoosier Dome, I thought they're not coming back. Yeah,
right.
It took me till September of '84 to realize
like God
that.
saying,
But I'm a junior in high school, Dave, at the time, and working at the paper, and all I ever wanted to do in my life, and you know this, you've known me since I was a kid, was B. John Stedman, B. Ken Rosenthal, B. Oscar Madison, B. Mike Lupica, B. Mitch Albom, B. A writer.
Tom Boswell?
Be a Tom Boswell, sure.
Yeah.
But he was more baseball
I
centric.
like how you threw Oscar Madison into that.
But I really,
yeah.
well, Oscar was Richie Cunningham was my first, but Oscar Madison. No, but in real terms, you have become that. You embody that. You know, Ricig got spit out of sports cartooning and does a million different things. I got spit out of the newspaper business, thank God. My dad was so pissed at me when he died. My dad died mad at me because I left the paper. He wanted me to stay at the paper and get a goal. He was so disappointed.
Right.
He loved to hear me on the radio when he died. You know, at that time, he died in summer '92. So he died. The stadium was new. There was no Camden Yards. Man, you were the beat writer, right? You were the beat writer when this all happened 30 years ago, when Camden Yards came, when the renaissance of sports was built off the backs of people like my father in the 50s and 60s and the Colts and the Orioles. The city got bent over and just screwed bad by the football thing. And then you come here and you're competing with the Baltimore Sun.
Yeah.
Beat writing the Orioles, which was still a primary beat in Washington at that time. Not the Redskins, but more important than the Capitals or the Bullets, right? At that time, right?
Yeah.
Run me through what your eyes have seen here for Baltimore, because you've made a life in this city. You chose to live here because you covered the baseball team, I think, at the beginning, right?
Yeah, I did. That's what I got hired to do. That's why I wound up in Baltimore. You know, they hired me to cover the Orioles. It didn't make any sense to live in D.C. I'm not a suburbs guy, so it was live in Baltimore.
You never lived in D.C., right?
I've never lived in D.C.
That's amazing. You worked at the Washington Post for 30 years.
Yeah.
And he's lived in Baltimore. And that's a beautiful thing.
That's a beautiful thing.
I mean, I've
Dave.
never had a job where I had to be in the office in D.C. every day. If that had ever happened,
that would have been tough.
I couldn't commute every day. If
right.
I probably would have moved.
But you took that gig thinking you were going to cover baseball for 30 years like Boswell, right?
No.
You had more interest in that.
Yeah, I was never I never considered myself just a baseball guy. Yeah, it was the job that got me into the door at the Washington Post.
But you had to really know it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part of like that. When I started to hire people, that I learned how dumb people were. You know, I'm not being mean, but like people that wanted to work at the radio station that had no writing skills at all. They just they had no writing skills, or they just didn't have as much knowledge as they thought they had. So I would do this. I mean, thank God for Luke Jones. Everybody that knows me knows that. Luke covers these teams better than anybody, and he was a school teacher up in Pennsylvania who went to Syracuse to be a journalist, you know, and then came back and followed a different path, and he's been doing it for me for 15 years. But the notion of how much you have to know, right? And I would do this King of Baltimore thing in the aughts, you know, 05, 6, 7, 8, 9. I was always looking for people that could come and do this for a living. And I would hand them a quiz, like sort of like a prick, right? And say, here, how much do you know?
Oh, like Diner?
Totally.
Yeah. That's exactly what I thought. Yeah.
Well, what would be the prerequisite to give you a microphone on my radio station if you don't know anything about baseball?
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Yeah. So these people would come to me, and they were, God bless all of them, they really thought they listened to me. They thought they could do this better than me. They thought they knew more, like all of that, right? And I would say, bring it on, right? Come play your song. It's open mic night, right? It's open mic night. So you can go back and watch these because it was on YouTube. We videoed it all. And Luke was the grand prize winner out of 500 different people tried to do this. Luke is the only one that can really do it. And I knew that the minute I met him, by the way he carried himself, his notes, his but more than that, the basis of knowledge that he knows something about Chico Simone, and that he knows something about Steve Dalkowski, and that he can name, you know what I mean? He just has such osmosis about this, and that's the way I was as an Aparicio. It's the way my father was. And when people didn't know as much about sports as me, I really would turn my nose up and say, you're not really qualified to cover the Orioles. Sorry. If you don't know who Ken Singleton is, it's probably not a good idea that you're on the radio here. I had a kid that interned for me, and he's still in my life, and I love him dearly. I sent him down to a Bullets game to do reports for me. And he said, and Phil Chenier is here tonight.
No.
Wow.
That's true.
You can't do that.
I'm saying.
Wow.
So when you say to me, I covered baseball at the Washington Post. Dude, your basis of knowledge of baseball had to be supernatural as a kid.
Oh, yeah, for sure,
Supernatural.
man. 100%. I mean, I lived and died, with the Atlanta Braves when I was a kid. I mean, I knew every stat on the back of every baseball card. I mean, I lived and died it. Now, at the same time, though, baseball wasn't my only passion back then.
Clearly,
right?
you're like
Just
REM.
Well, and not even in sports. I mean, just like you. I mean, you would have loved the Colts, right? I mean, just as much.
Sure.
Back in the day, right? So we had the Falcons, and at that era, the Atlanta Hawks were the best team in the city.
Dominique.
That was the Dominique era Hawks. Just couldn't get past the Pistons, and then couldn't get past, the Larry Bird Celtics. But they were the best team in town.
We had Steve Bartkowski too when you were a kid.
We had they had some playoff appearances, and the Braves had one appearance in I want to say '82 behind Dale Murphy.
That was Bob Horner.
Yeah. But then hard times, So I had a huge base of knowledge on all sports coming here. And it wasn't just baseball. That was the job that got me in the door at the Washington Post.
Well, that's why I said to you, I met you, you're covering the Orioles, and I'm thinking, in the end, you would have liked Rosenthal's track or Verducci's track in regard to loving baseball the way Jeff Passan loved. And I loved baseball that much. But once Angelos bought the team, it became not fun. I mean, to be on the radio every day watching the thing get ripped apart and people are asking me how and why, and I'm like, well, the owner's a creep. He's willing to lie about anything to anybody. He's petty. He's mean. Like all of these things. And the Snyder thing in D.C. from the Post perspective. But 30 years into this, we don't have a lease. And the commissioner's talking about bringing the All-Star game back.
Yeah.
Like, I am just – I love the Renaissance. I love the players. I'm just wondering, like, this was supposed to move our community and change our community, and it did. It got you here. You live here all these years later because of it, literally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you remember in the 90s, the Orioles were the thing, right? It was what everybody did. Yeah, but even after the Ravens came in the picture, I mean, it was still a baseball town.
It was,
and it defined the summer in the city was the Orioles. It was you measured your summer by the standings, right? You knew when the All-Star game came. You were at the midpoint of summer. I mean, you just felt that in the rhythms of the city, right? And the stadium was filled every night with 40,000 people.
Right.
And then slowly they lost that, right?
Well, that was built by Brooks and Earl and I mean, it took a generation to build that.
And a beautiful new stadium.
And it was the stadium. Yeah. It was the stadium as much as anything. Because at the end at Memorial, like, the crowds weren't what they,
Well, it was an allure enough to Washington that the Washington Post dedicated hundreds of thousands of dollars to you to cover it.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, Washington
and that was
financed
but that was only because Washington didn't have a team
Correct.
at the time. And if Washington had a team, as they do now, we drop the Orioles as a B. I mean, it's just a financial decision.
So did the Athletic, from what I understand.
Well,
but for where sports journalism, we can go into the whole thing, but for what baseball represents, and I keep asking this question because John's going to go to our government. You're going to pay for it. We're all going to pay for it, for them to be here, to do something that makes it not 30 years old anymore, right? Something that's new, something that's fresh, like the Top Golf or the casino or whatever Steve's going to do with the $600 million that they've given him now, that all these teams are here to benefit the community. I mean, that's why we lure them. That's why we fear losing them, right? That's why we think, like, if we lost the Orioles, oh, my God, we wouldn't. Well, I mean, we lost the Colts here one time, and it sucked. It did. It changed everything about those 12 years of, and you were here for all 12 years of that, Ricig. I mean, it changed our community.
Sure, absolutely. And you can feel it because Oakland has lost now 2 major sports teams within a few years.
Well, look at St. Louis, what's been done to that community, right? Every time I have Howard Balzer on and just the lies that went into that, I'm not concerned the Orioles are going anywhere. I'm concerned with how it's about more than just the Angelos family making money. How is it about the city? How is it about all of us?
I've told you this before. The Orioles aren't going anywhere, and it's not out of any benevolence on anybody. It's just the sheer economics of baseball wanting to expand, right? And they're not going to give up a premium market somewhere where they would like to expand. They're not going to give that to the Orioles to go and take away Nashville or Portland or Las Vegas or whatever. I mean, Las Vegas is off the table now apparently, but you know what I'm saying? They want to expand to 32 teams. So they're not going to give the Orioles one of the top cities. They're just not going to let that happen. Even if they wanted to move, which I'm not convinced they do, they're not going to let it happen. they are not going to move.
The worry I have now is, having watched Major League 100 times since it came out, that they're winning now, and we have to support it, right? Financially, whatever the barometer is right this moment, right, wherever they are right now or this offseason for sales, tickets, whatever Masson's going to become, whatever the next dream is financially, they can't even get their games on Friday night at my house, right? Like, Luke was at the beach in Wildwood last week and couldn't use the app and couldn't watch the games, right? Like, it's 2023.
Okay, that's more of an MLB thing than the Orioles. The MLB is putting their product all over the place. You have to have a Excel spreadsheet to know what channel they're on any given night. I mean, I hear Yankees fans complaining about it. I mean, I hear Nationals fans. Everybody.
Well, the Dodgers have had a generation where they're not on TV.
Well, that's another thing.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, Apple TV is involved. Amazon's, it's Major League Baseball, and it's all sports. It's all sports in America trying to get their arms around this new world of splintering, TV, cord cutting, streaming. No one knows where this is going, and everybody is scrambling to try to get their product in front of eyeballs. They're not trying to hide their product from you, I guarantee you that. But they have not yet figured out where this is all going, and they're trying to keep options open.
Well, it's not going back into the hole. We're not going back to newspapers and cable television.
Right.
And Super
We're not
TV.
going.
We're not going there.
No.
So, but for me, this is such a huge opportunity for the Orioles to capture market share, to capture hearts, to capture minds. I know part of the Ravens just keeping up and signing Lamar was they didn't want to play a year without a quarterback.
That's
or a year with Anthony. I mean, because they could have gone that method. They could be selling Anthony Richardson out here and say, hey, we don't have $52 million into him. We're going to go buy 3 more Roquan Smiths with that money, and we're going to groom another quarterback here. And they didn't. The Ravens felt like that there is that going on because there's not a lot of money to go around in this marketplace, especially now that the Nationals have claimed that money. Who's coming back to these skyboxes? Who are the people that are going to buy? Who are the fans that are going to fill the stadium? And that's the thing that worries me for the Orioles, is saying we're all that Peter went up the barn in 1997 and said we would be if Washington got a team. We're the Oakland. We're the second team in this market for money, for all the big money, for all the real skybox money, sponsorship money, eyeballs, that it's imperative that the Orioles capture the market here and it not have 8,000 people in the stadium next May on a Tuesday night, because that really is an impetus to say, maybe I could do better in Nashville. Maybe we could do better. So, because I don't think there's any rush for John to have a lease. I mean, I think about it. John can go day to day, week to week for the next 8 years if he wants. The fans don't seem to know or care. It doesn't matter. Nobody's asking questions about it. And why should he sign it? What's the benefit to him unless he gets what he wants, which is what Atlanta has, which is a city, basically, around it, right?
Yeah, which, you have to ask yourself, would that work here in the same way? Atlanta, I've been there. I've been to Truist Park or whatever it's called this year. It's out in the suburbs, right? And there's tons of parking. There's a huge footprint of land, and it's beautiful and it's welcoming and it's amazing. It's an amazing atmosphere. But I don't know that works in Baltimore to the same degree without all the parking and without all the infrastructure and the space and the footprint. I don't know. I mean, I've been hearing that for years. I've been hearing that for as long as I've heard we've got to redo Harbor Place, and we've got to make that inviting. And it's a version of the same thing, right? But
the journalist in me and the journalist in you should be saying, okay, where are the 5 smart people with the plan? John wants $1 billion. He wants federal. What's the plan? Is it housing? Is it mixed use? Is it craft? Is it a mall? Is it a movie thing? What is it? I know it's not a mall, but I mean, bring me the ideas, and I yell them out, and you yell them out, and the media yells them out, and we yell them out together and say, I like that. Hey, when Camden Yards was built, and you probably remember this, Ricig, Stedman had a real hard-on about that stadium being in Port Covington. He wanted that stadium where the new city is, where the cruise ships are. He loved the water. He loved the access to 95, the transportation core. He
didn't love the warehouse.
It was a wasteland, right? I mean, it was a wasteland even then, right? It was the edge of the docks. Stedman, every day. You can go back. Stedman wrote 50 columns.
Yes.
50 columns trying. I don't know whether the senator down there was in his pocket or I don't know who was egging him. Somebody was in his ear egging him to write Port Covington, to the point where I entered the stadium with John the day that they let the media come in before the Mets game back in '92,
Right.
and I walked the stadium with John, and John liked it, but you could tell it wasn't his idea. You know, like I was with him the whole time. He thought that stadium belonged in Port Covington. I don't know that he ever came around before he died, and even saying, okay, it invigorated downtown, you know, like, but there was a movement afoot. I'd love to have that kind of a debate about whatever we're going to do down there, but I think it'd be a fun civic debate, but I think it's a necessary debate if they're asking for money from everybody. That
is true.
right.
Absolutely. And, I mean, you know, let's flip it around. I mean, now, I mean, don't you feel like with this team and the way that everybody has done their part to make this a contender, that now it's on ownership to supplement that roster and turn it into a champion, right? I mean, everybody on board has done what they were signed up to do, including the GM, who a lot of people wanted to slam for this teardown job and didn't believe that they could get it to this point. He's done it. The players have done it. The front office has done it. The manager has done it. The scouting has done it.
Now we have to spend money on it and
it's
go
time
see
to
it.
spend.
Right.
Well, I mean, the crowds have been pretty good.
They're good on
It's
nights.
not going to be, yeah. It's not going to, they're not going to draw 3 million, you know, like back in the day. This year,
I mean, are we including the city itself as a detractor there?
This is where I want to like push back on this, Sheinin. So, by the way, we're at Coco's Pub. We're doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. That's why I like. So, all of this lowering the bar, I'm fine with. It's not going to be 3.6, and the Washington people aren't going to come back. But why limit what it can or can't be? I mean, the fact that they leave those seats empty up on the Free the Bird seats. Those are the seats we sat in for Free the Birds.
Free the Bird seats.
Yeah, those were also the seats when I sold 2,500 of them for a Phillies game that I found pictures today because I'm doing my top 25 moments ever. But when I think about the moments at the stadium and things that happen at the stadium and where this momentum is supposed to lead, right? All these great players are coming. The momentum should lead to that it should, I don't want to say unlimited, but we shouldn't be limited by saying,
no.
well, 20,000's a good crowd.
but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying for this year.
For this year.
You
yes.
haven't done anything yet. You're still on the upswing now. Now, if they put together a winner, a consistent winner here for 3-4 years, and it gets to be like 1996 and 97 again, where you know you have a contender from day one, then you should be getting the 30,000 crowds every day. And
well, we've seen that in Philadelphia where it changed when they started to win. We see that in Kansas City when they won. Now they're not winning again.
We're still on the upswing from that. Like, we're not there yet. That lags a year behind.
I agree.
It lags a year behind in both directions. If you remember in '98, a disaster of a season when Alomar, Palmeiro, and everybody's fighting, and
Bell.
And Albert Bell, well, he came in '99, but that year still had a 3 million attendance, right? And for a terrible team, and then by 99, 2000, it started to decline. The attendance always lags a couple of years behind on both ends. So for this team to build a contending team right now, you're going to get the payoff with attendance in 24 and 25.
That's interesting, yeah.
I'm not even as interested in attendance as I am as just buy-in that everybody knows who the players are. They're following the thing. You know, Chris Pike has said something to me. He's like, they're doing well enough that they'll sell out playoff games. And I'm like, all right, if that's the goal. I mean, they're going to charge a lot of money so that there's a barrier when playoffs start. I see this everywhere we go. How much? You know, the $20 ticket's $120. Maybe you go, maybe. But they will sell. It will look good here in October. My concern is it looked good in October in 14 and in 16. And to your point, by 19, it was all over with and everybody went away again.
Right.
Kansas City's experiencing that now, right? I don't know where St. Louis has been built for a generation. They can survive it. Cincinnati, they're all rushing back in one moment because they didn't hate their owner. They haven't had 30 years of that. But Cincinnati's a blueprint for, like, they'll come instantly if you win. It isn't instant here. There's more of a barrier here than there are in other places. I wonder where that barrier is. And then the point, to your point, 2 years from now, what does it look like when it's mature? That's what I want to see.
If it's allowed to mature, right? I mean, if you're just building a low payroll, if you just want to be the Tampa Bay Rays and try to go cheap and win, you know, there's a real thin margin of error right there. This should, you know, back in the 90s, this was an upper quartile payroll, right? This was consistently a top 5, top 8 payroll.
Right.
And I mean, that's what this should be again. I mean, or at least in the middle of the pack.
They've cried small market for so long.
I know.
That people believe it. You believe it. We're never going to draw $3 million. I mean, literally, there's a mindset about that says we can't be the Yankees or we. I don't know. We could have been the Cardinals the last 30 years or the Red Sox if it was well managed. It was never well managed.
Well, I mean, at least as a fan, I have confidence that this is built for the long term now. So, this core.
There's still so many key decisions to make, though. And who's making them? Other than Elias. I'm talking about when the real decisions, Dave. When it's we're going to buy a pitcher. When we're going to buy a pitcher 2 weeks from now, and it's going to cost X amount against payroll. It's going to double your payroll next year or whatever.
Right.
Are you willing or are you not? And what prospects? And you can always say, well, we love Colton Cowles. We're not going to give him away. We're not going to give away. They wanted Holiday. We're not. They've played that game for a long time, and I'm not as demanding as you are. Like, I have lowered I'm Stockholm syndromed here. I don't feel like they have to make a deal. I don't feel like they have to win the World Series this year. I don't feel like they even have to make a full effort because I am bought in on, you got all these young guys, bring them up. I've had people already calling me. Mike Rosenfeld, our chief digital officer, I spanked him this week on the air. He's like, it's time we extend Rutschman. I'm like, I don't know when the right time is, but I would say, whoa, 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 whoa. If I'm John, I'm like, whoa, 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 hold on, But this is the battle cry of the fans now, is they want to see something that looks like commitment. And I'm like, oh, God, they've won all these. This feels like commitment to me. And I'm the nasty one, I mean, I'm not the nice guy here with them.
I mean, the problem, though, is that, of course, this, is keeping a core together, you get them for 6 years. I mean, that's it, and you're not going to be able to keep everybody. I mean, look at the turnover. The Tampa Bay Rays are held up as this, model of efficiency, and I mean, but they lose their players, all the time, or they take they roll the dice and sign them as 19-year-olds to 15-year contracts, So
like we would have had Jonathan Scope or Chris Davis, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, yeah. Chris Davis. Woo.
Well, there's your cautionary tale.
That's exactly right. And
I already said Albert Bell, but that was a whole generation ago.
I mean, that's the risk, right? That you sign a Chris Davis for $25 million a year for 7 years, and you're stuck with him once he stops producing. And so, I mean, with a Rutschman, I mean, the time to have wrapped him up was a year ago before he becomes an all-star, and then you get him cheap and you do a 10-year deal. Like some of the Braves are masters of this. The Braves have Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Riley Adams. They have all these dudes locked up in 10-year deals that bought out their 0 to 3 years and their arbitration years and gave them a gazillion dollars that looks like a lot, but once they hit free agency age, you've got them on the cheap for the prime years of their career, 25, 26, 27. That's what I think the Orioles should be looking at.
Well, we talked about this, the Lamar-a-thon, the dread of all of that in the offseason and what we went through with that.
That was brutal.
Yeah. I don't want that for the Orioles, but I also don't want Chris Davis for the Orioles, right? I mean, therein lies the balance of sign Rutschman, extend Rutschman. I want to see it. I want to see a pitcher here by the end of the month.
Well,
there's
a couple things with the Davis deal that makes it an anomaly. It was not a GM deal. It was an ownership deal. There were warning signs everywhere. The GM at the time did not want to do that deal. The owner did that deal. And it blew up on them. There were warning signs. Chris Davis was an older dude. Like, he was not 21 years old. He was 28 or 29.
I think their medical people also knew that he had some issues in regard to when he was using a drug or when he wasn't, how it helped him perform. I mean,
so I wouldn't use that as a cautionary tale for what I'm talking about, which is locking up young dudes who are rookies or second-year players and locking them up through their free agency years because the player gets the guarantee of this
if they give
nine-figure
Rutschman
deal.
$200 million right now
Yes.
for whatever 6-8 whatever year whatever the number would be for him.
Right.
Does that make you happier does that make you buy an Orange Club? I'm seriously, like, does that make you invest back? I don't know. It doesn't make me more or less of an Oriole. It really doesn't. Or make me more inclined to go. It just makes their payroll heavier, and it makes this mindset that he's going to be here in 2029.
Well, just to have one guy like that would be
it would.
be a lot of fire for me as a fan to see them do it with one guy because they've let some other guys, Machado, other guys, go by the wayside. So yeah, I'd like to see that, and I think that's the right guy to do it with too.
You know, I tell you what the cautionary tale is. Honest to God, is I'm at the Washington Post. I mean, look at what's happened with the Nationals. They let Bryce Harper and Anthony Rendon walk away in back-to-back years, right? In the case of Rendon, maybe it wasn't such a bad move given what's happened since. Bryce Harper, is an MVP type of player. They gave their money to Steven Strasburg,
right,
who has not pitched since he got $200 million. Like, he has not pitched.
At the time, it didn't seem like something you would write about as a columnist and say, how dare they? I mean, it felt like, well, Strasburg, got to have that guy, right? And pitching's changed so much in the last 10 years, too, as far as how we want to use pitchers, what starters and closers and innings. I hear Palmer every night. I mean, the era of giving any pitcher that kind of money or thinking you're going to have a horse anymore, let somebody else sign him. I mean, let the Yankees have him. Let somebody else do that.
Unless he can also hit you 40 home runs like Shohei Ohtani.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, right.
That guy's going to get $500 million. I mean, he's going to blow it up. He might get $600 million. That contract is going to blow.
So why can't the Orioles sign him?
And his name is Ohtani.
See, this is where I get flippant, right? This is where
Matty Botani.
Dave, this is where I get flippant. Where and compare baseball to hockey, basketball, football, where if you say free agent name, Lamar Jackson, you'd say, well, there's no team that wouldn't sign him. Or a basketball player, it was really available. If a player was really available, that Ted Leone just wouldn't want to pay him. You know what I mean? That there's no pay issue there. The discrepancy in payroll is such the original sin of baseball, right? Like, it's Garden of Eden stuff for me. But the notion that the best player available is out there, and this goes back to Peter running the team. When the best player was Teixeira, we can't afford that. When the best player was Clemens, can't afford that. Because once 02, 03 happened and Peter started putting $25-50 million of his own money in on David Segui and Conine, we never were in on a best player again. We were just never, at that point it's, that's enough money for Messina, or that we can't afford, we're a small market. We're all of that. That when the best player's out there and we can all look at Ohtani and say, oh, my God, if the Orioles invested, not that he would want to come here, but let's just say he's Mickey Mantle. But the fact that we're not even allowed to even talk about that is, it's not good for the sport. I would just say that we're not allowed to talk about him. He's only allowed to play somewhere else. That's bad. I think that's bad. I really believe that.
Wouldn't we be the team that could afford him, though, because we don't have any expensive players on the
fan
team?
talking here.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, I think it's almost more philosophy than anything else. I mean, I think in baseball history, it's shown that one player consuming like 50% of a payroll is a recipe for disaster. I mean, just name a team.
Lamar.
Well, the NFL is different in a way. NFL's different in a way because of the salary cap and everything.
He's only 24%. He's not 50%.
Okay.
Oh, we got crab cakes here.
Oh, mercy.
Okay, are we done with sports?
Yeah, we're done with sports.
You bored with it?
I'm good, man. Yeah. Let's go back to music, if anything, or
Dude,
food.
you're so like me. When I go out, I'm a sports guy.
Yeah.
People want to come up to me and talk to me about sports. I'm like, man, I'll talk about my plants, my cat, the
Yeah,
weather, whether we're going to see the Northern Lights tonight,
Yeah.
this crab cake at Coco's. But I do love sports. We all love sports here. But we're sold out on sports.
Well, can I just say before we go,
Sure.
Cito sucks.
Cito does suck. 30
I
years
was at
later.
that game, and I
30 years
still
later.
say Cito sucks.
Cito does suck.
So here's the deal about coming to Coco's today. Subliminally, it's peach cake season, and I was looking for a place where I could get peach cake on the way to getting a crab cake today. I didn't realize that till I woke up this morning and thought, I'm driving right past Fenwick. I'm going to bring some peach cake for Marcella. So I've known Marcella
nice.
30 years. I met Marcella watching Houston Oilers games 30 years ago, and her mom, and she's like, me and my mom, we got this little place called Coco's down by where Ricig lives, down by the city.
Yeah.
And we have this famous crab cake, and all these years later, 1985, right? It says so right there. Year I graduated high school. Since I graduated high school, Marcella's been flipping these giant crab cakes out over here at Coco's. So here's the thing: this week when I needed a guest, I'm like, I really want to have Sheinin on. I want to sit with him. I don't want him doing it from his kitschy basement with his guitars, his little man cave down there. Ricig's in the neighborhood, so I knew. But when I say to you, you want to come to Coco's and have a crab cake, you're like, 30 seconds. Oh, I love that place. I'll be there in a minute.
Who doesn't love this place?
And he lives on the east side.
Place.
So
I live on the east side.
And we're gonna hear from Marcella and her crew. She's got some special guests here, people that have worked here for a long time, made these crab cakes. Like I've seen Liz and Eric slinging them back here, and they call it paradise here. She's got margaritas, cold beer at a reasonable price. That's a Springsteen line. Do you like that one?
I do.
Do you like that? Cold beer at a reasonable price. And we're gonna be talking about the legendary Coco's crab cake. It's a Maryland crab cake tour. Sheinin, you get a lucky Maryland lottery scratch off. Ricig, your wife already claimed one. I hope she won because you got grandkids to feed that look just like your kids.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Mike Ricigliano has been my friend for 40 years. Sheinen's only been my friend for 30 years, so we have 70 years of relationship. If I add Marcella, it's 100 years of relationship. If I add Terry, it's 140 years of relationship here. So a lot of people and a lot of memories here in Lauraville. So come on down, enjoy yourself. We're going to come back, talk about this crab cake. I'm done. We're done with baseball. We're done with football.
I'd be fine if we were. I mean, I'd be fine keeping going, but
last thing, I'm going to leave you guys with this before we get to the crab cake. Are we going to have a parade here? Are you a true believer in Lamar Jackson? I take a lot of heat on what I've seen and what the outcome has been and what the results have been as to whether he's really going to win or not, really going to win a Super Bowl. He's going to beat and the Orioles, I don't know what they are. They're fun right now. And to your point, you think they need augmentation. We all want them to spend money. They need stuff, right?
Yeah.
So this year they need stuff. But they have resources over the next couple of years, financially and otherwise. The Ravens are what they are and have coaching and pedigree and Roquan Smith and all of this stuff. I want to go to bed at night believing we're going to win again. Our city is going to win again. And it smells as good as we sit here right now on the 30th anniversary of the All-Star game being here. The chances in the next 5 years, if we're betting on it, you can bet on anything now, they're better. But are you a true believer? And if you're a believer, is it the Orioles or the Ravens? That's going to be the tough part of the question. So go ahead, Dave. I'm going to give it to you first because you're the expert.
I mean, I'm just going to say no, only because it's incredibly hard to win a championship in either sport, any sport. The Ravens. Let's start with them. They're in it every year. They go into every year. You believe that they have a chance to contend. I don't buy this whole Lamar can't win a championship thing. They used to say that about John Elway, right? I mean, how many guys have you heard that about over the years that went on to win a championship? I don't buy that at all. It's just that it just requires everything to work, and we've been spoiled here to have had two, right? I mean, that's not normal. That's not normal to have two Super Bowl championships in a 20-year period or whatever it was.
I'm a Bills fan. We haven't had any.
Exactly. So I'm just going to say no.
All he's got's wide right. That's all he's got. And OJ.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna say no on them, and I'm gonna say no on the Orioles, essentially for the same reason, but also just the fact that it's the division. I mean, they might sneak into a wild card once. But, in this division, when you've got the Yankees, the Red Sox, Blue Jays, and the Rays year in and year out are as good as anybody, man, the degree of difficulty is off the charts. Off the charts.
I'm
not going to say never, but you're telling me 5 years, I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say now or never for the Ravens because I just think the cap thing with Lamar is
because you lived through Flacco, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'll disagree on the Orioles. I think they are built for the long haul, and they've done a great job with it here. If we're looking at like an Astros model, then the Astros won. Granted, they were in an easier division, but still.
And they cheated.
And they cheated.
But,
okay. But
other than that.
I like our chances of a championship for the Orioles over the next 3 or 4 years. That's the way I feel about it.
I love it. I would love nothing more. Yeah.
So I was chronicling your work amongst many others, and we've talked about it. You and I had beers together down in Fells Point when I was writing the Peter Principles, right? So the Peter Principles, I stopped writing when Jen got cancer, and the story kind of stops when Masson was born. It stops in about 06, okay? And Peter was much less active in many ways after that, right? Because you were on the beat. And Jen got cancer in 14, and I stopped writing. And they were great in 14, right? 14 they were great that year.
Yep.
And I thought, you watch, this book is going to end with a parade. After all Peter's done, I'm going to write a book about the Orioles, and he's going to have the last laugh because they could have won. In 12, certainly they could have won. 14, they absolutely could have won, right?
Yeah.
Right? I'm out in Kansas City believing, I'm going to cap this. Book's already written. It's Peter Principles. All I got to do is now bring it to J.J. Hardy and write about it. Never happened. I never added to it. I'm releasing the Peter Principles this summer. I got chapter 6 and 7 coming out this week. I have these 2 books here, on how hard it is to win. I'll be giving these away for our 25th anniversary on the 3rd and 4th at Drug City. I have a couple dozen of these and maybe about 100 of these left. When they're gone, they're gone. I'm happy they're going to be free. So come on out and get them. By the way, if you don't have a copy,
I have them both, man. Yeah.
So either way,
autograph.
I really believe, and I sit here right now, and I'm going to say this out loud. I haven't said this before. I think the next parade would be the Orioles if it's one of the two. I think the Orioles will come closer to winning a championship with this group, with whatever John screws up. As long as Elias and Sig, their contract's not up tomorrow,
right,
and they're this guy's crazy, we're just out. We're just out. And we would never know that. I don't know that we knew how upset Pat Gillick was until he was gone, right? You don't know that. I'm assuming Elias is happy. I'm assuming they're staying. I'm assuming there will be some money from all of this money once he pays off all of that they can win over the next 2 or 3 years before Dad dies and they have to liquidate and whatever's going to happen with it. They have more talent. They're better positioned to win a championship over the next 36 months than the Ravens. And the Ravens think they're positioned, right?
Well,
the Ravens think that
there's just 6 or 7 other teams that are as good as the Ravens right now.
I like the Orioles' chances of navigating October better than I like the Ravens' chances of navigating January. And I mean that.
Baseball is much more of a crapshoot, too. Any team can win a 7-game series or a 5-game series, right? We've seen that. We've seen wild card teams all the time winning World Series. It happens almost as much as it doesn't. I think if they get to October, they're as capable of anybody as to win. Yeah.
All right, so my next book will be in order. I'm making that up. There'll be no more next books. I'm trying to get rid of the ones I got. Don't become an author, Sheinin. It's not that profitable.
Oh, I've been an author.
How profitable was it?
Yeah, it was not profitable.
That's why you makes rock and roll. That's why he's doing albums in the basement.
My book was about Robert Griffin III, so that says it all. Yeah.
That did not have a happy. Both my books have happy endings. That book did not have a happy ending.
No, it did not. No.
Yeah.
Dave Sheinin, Washington Post, Mike Ricigliano. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. Our friends at Window Nation, 866-90Nation. I got my windows on August the 8th of last year. It'll be a year. And I love my windows. My cat loves my windows. The breeze. My wife's been out of town. I like it hot as hell because I'm Latin. So the air conditioning hasn't been on, so I'm saving money for Coco's Crab Cakes. All brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery and our friends at Window Nation. So get on that, 866-90Nation. We are at Beaumont on the 20th, and then we're back at Costas on the 3rd, and we're going to be at Drug City on the 4th, celebrating 25 years and just giving away everything that's not nailed down, including this crab cake. I'm Nestor. We are WNST. Back for more. We're going to hear the whole Coco story in these softball crab cakes from Lauraville next. Stay with us.